Now, there are three phases in delivering a speech. Delivering a speech is not merely just talking to people. So we need to consider the three phases in delivering a speech. So we have the phase one, that is the writing phase. The second one is the preparatory phase. And the third one is the delivery phase. So the one that we've talked earlier is the third phase, which is the delivery phase. But we opted to discuss the first and the second phase. So that's the reason why we are having this video, for us to be able to encounter, be knowledgeable, and learn the three phases of delivering a speech. So first, we will discuss the first phase, which is the writing. So there are 10 keys to writing a speech. So we will know what are the things that we need to know in delivering a speech. So the first one that we need to consider is make a memorable speech. What is this make a memorable speech? So, make a memorable speech means the experience of successful speeches tell us that an audience may only remember a single line. For example, Abraham Lincoln started his Gettysburg Address with this line: 407 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this content a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So Lincoln's line encapsulated the main point of his speech. So we must fight for freedom and equality. That's what Abraham Lincoln trying to imply in his line. So by that, you can learn from the example drawn by Abraham Lincoln. Condense your theme into a 15 to 20 word and build your speech around the line. So I am pretty sure that you are very much familiar in the writing process. So in writing process, you need to have that what we call thesis statement, or the main topic. So it should be revealed in your speech. So there are figures of speech that could leave an impression. Since this is a speech, you can use a speech, an informal speech. So you can use figurative languages like simile, metaphor, oxymoron. Those are the figure of speeches. So you can use those things to give an impression to your speech. So a powerful speech is very much like a stimulating conversation. You can learn very important lessons from the style that the advice was delivered and can apply them in your speech. So in short, making a memorable speech, you are trying to give something to your audience that they will never forget. If it's a line or something that they could apply into themselves. So that's the first tip if you are going to write your speech. The second one is to observe a structure in your speech. Structure. So you have to recall a terrible speech where you lost interest. I am pretty sure that you already encountered or you already experienced delivering a speech in front of many people. And perhaps there are also times that you deliver the speech unprepared and you encountered the terrible speech you've ever had. So you need to try to analyze what caused you to lose your interest, or what caused you to have that terrible speech. Is it probable that the speaker wandered off his plan? Is it because the speaker felt nervous during that time? Maybe you are unprepared, you wasn't able to organize your speech. Well, there are two things that an audience expect from a speaker. So the first one is a clear direction and a destination. So since you are the speaker, you and your audience are the the tourist. So you are the tourist guide and your audience are the tourist. So basically the tourist wanted to go to a specific destination. So you as a tourist guide, you are going to guide them to the perfect destination that they are looking for. So same with delivering a speech. So you as a speaker, you have to provide a clear direction and a clear destination because your listeners want to know where your speech is heading and the rationale for that direction. So you have to make things clear as crystal clear. It would be wise to present a short outline of your speech right at the start. That would be a great help. Um, you could also watch out and delete anything that is off tangent. Off tangent means that are not related. Okay? And conflicting or ambiguous, that means a double meaning. So if an item in your speech does not help you put across your main message and you have to delete it. Because as being mentioned, it should be clear direction and clear destination. There are two things that you need to remember. So if you have clear destination, if you have a clear direction, then you have a very structured speech. Okay? So that's the second tip for writing a speech. So the third one is exploit the opening of your speech. What do you mean by this? Well, the opening part is crucial. And yes, this is very true. In delivering a speech, you have to give an impression to your audience. So, how to give an impression? And where to give that impression? You have to provide that impression in the opening part of your speech. So if you could win the attention of your audience right at the beginning of your speech, then half of the battle was won. The rest of the speech could just follow its natural course. That's what exploit the opening of your speech. You need to make your opening speech extravagant, or you need to make your opening speech eye-catchy or would really catch the attention of your audience. So there are different ways on how to open a speech. Maybe you can start with a humorous story. You can open it with a relevant quotation, or you can even start it with a question. Those are the things that we can use if we want to catch the attention of our audience in the opening spiel or in the opening of our speech. So we can encourage our audience to participate by raising their hands if you raised any question. You can also engage your listeners early, but you need to keep the appetizers of your opening short. Since your audience might lose interest if your introduction is too long, you have to remember that. It's just a good cup of tea. So if you are doing the opening spiel or if you are doing the opening part of your speech, it should not be short as in too short, or it should not be long as in too long. It's just a perfect blend of ingredient, just a perfect cup of tea. So you need to enjoy the honeymoon part and the momentum of your beginning moment with your audience. So you have to remember that. So while this may be a great fantasy, I am pretty sure that 99% of your audience if you will prepare your opening speech, the audience will be caught by that striking statement and focus on why and how this will happen. So that's for the exploit of the opening speech. And for the fourth one, begin with the right tone. Begin with the right tone. Tone, we are very much familiar with it because we already encountered the word tone in our previous discussion. So what is this tip number 4 means? What do you mean by tip number 4? Tip number 4, begin with the right tone. So adapting the right tone requires you to answer some basic question. So the first question, who are your listeners? This is very important. You need to know your audience. You need to know your listener. Because if you know your audience, then that's the time you could able to adopt, or you could able to change your speech style. So second, what is the reason for attending? So what do they want to hear? So those 3 are the common questions for you to be able to adjust the right tone of your speech. So same with writing your speech. You have to make sure that you meet the expectations of your listeners, regardless of the nature of your speech. Is it to educate, to inform, to motivate, entertain, or even challenge? Regardless of the purpose, as long as you meet the expectation, then everything is so perfect. So what are the things that you need to do? You need to review your main points. If they suit the theme or the occasion. If it's not, then change it, or you have to put some revision in it. Ask yourself, will my speech inspire and develop the best in my audience? And you have also to consider the following small tips. If the setting is professional, make your speech upbeat and inspiring. That's very common. It depends on the nature of the speech. Since if you could remember, you need to know who are your audience. So if you know who are your audience, then you can able to adjust your speech. If it's professional, your audience are professionals, then you have to act, or you have to have that tone of being professional. It should be upbeat and inspiring. So less jokes, because these are professionals. But you could use upbeat and some jolly tones so that they will be inspired in your speech. So your listeners may forget everything you said. That's very true. But you can consider your speech successful if they leave the hall with a smile and a greater sense of hope and purpose. That's very true in all aspects. Even if you are just talking to a friend, we are very sure that everything that we've said to our friend will be forgotten. But as long as your friend will leave with a great smile, with a great realization, then everything is so perfect. So you need to begin your speech with the right tone. Okay? So next is number 5, be convinced with your message. So you need to be convinced with your message. So how and in what sense? So a speaker is like a marketing expert. We speakers are marketers as well. You have to encourage your audience to buy your point. In short, you are trying to sell something to your audience. I mean, you are trying to catch their attention. So how could you catch their attention if you yourself are not convinced with your message? If you yourself are uh, um, are not sure with your message. So if your listeners do not buy your message, they will not listen to your speech too because they are not interested. So your nonverbal cues and style of delivery will leave the biggest impression among your audience. So if we could remember our previous discussion about nonverbal cues, the sign language, the facial expressions, the gestures, those are also part of delivering a speech. So fortunately, there are techniques that you can use to connect with your audience. And that's actually the reason why these facial expressions, these gestures, body movement, body language that we are doing, if we are having our speech, that's actually a big aspect in delivering a speech. So, first thing first, if you really wanted to convince your audience with your message, you can use jokes. Crack a joke about your goosebumps so that your listeners can relate to being nervous about public speaking. Since most speakers experience the same feeling, yes, that's very true. Not all speakers standing in front are um, don't feel the nervousness that everyone feels. Okay, so share a story. You can also share a story of yourself, but make sure it is relevant to your topic. You have to make sure of that. And remember to write your speech much like having an interesting conversation with a close friend. So you remember, you are not a preacher. Just be yourself. On stage, be sure to be at your best. So you need to convince with your message. That's number 5. For number 6, emphasized or emphasize important points. You need to emphasize important points. What do you mean by this? In writing your speech, repeat your important points. Or in speech delivery, you have that loudness of voice and you have that gestures to give emphasis on your statement. Same with writing a speech. To have emphasis on the important points, you could repeat it once, twice, to leave a lasting impression. You can stress the keywords, phrases, and themes, and be on the lookout for opportunities to tie up and reinforce earlier important points. And repeat important points just like a refrain in your favorite song. Yes, that's very true. If you could notice in your favorite song, not all songs are sung once. So there are repetition, like chorus. Chorus are being repeated or is being repeated not only once but twice, many times, to give emphasis on the important point. And usually in a song, chorus is the important point. So you have to remember that your parents would lecture you on partying, fighting, peer pressure, and quitting. Many times we seem not to pay attention to them. From time to time, they always tell about these things. Same with emphasizing important points. If it's possible, from time to time, you need to repeat those important points. Eventually, we encounter those realities and we realize the things that our parents simply repeated over and over again until they stop. The same principle that we can apply on putting across your message. Always remember, repeat your important points. That's for number 6. How to emphasize important points? You need to repeat it. Number 7, connect the important pointers by using conjunctions. So I will not discuss any further with regards to conjunction because you are familiar with it. Because in one of my videos, I explained the different types of conjunctions. So conjunctions means connect one sentence to another. So same here. connect the important points by using conjunction. So since we've talked earlier about emphasizing important points, now this time we will try to connect those important points in our speech by using conjunction. So in certain instances, our listeners would not be able to identify what is important in your speech. So that's where you need to use transitional devices, transitional phrases to indicate your intent. For instance, you can use a rhetorical question like, what is the point? Then allow a short pause. Silence gets the attention of your audience. That's very true. And if you could notice, part of this video, I tried to pause because silence can get the attention of your audience. And this technique creates the participation or the anticipation among your audiences. Similarly, a statement like, so here's the factor, could capture an audience interest because you're just trying to give something that you will say, oh, everybody listen, here's the thing. So it gives them a cue that important point is about to be presented. Thus, even if they were not attentive before, they could now catch up and be with you again because of those conjunctions that you can use in connecting those important points. And let's proceed to number 8. Integrate some theatrics. Wow, that theatrics. So integrate some theatrics. In this lecture, or in some lectures, convey then encourages volunteer to try another approach by starting to place a rock in a bowl is a technique that is very effective. What do you mean? The key word there is the volunteerism. He's volunteer to try another approach. So the technique of trying to let your audience volunteer something as part of the participation in your speech may be an aspect of becoming or having an interesting speech. So for a smaller audience, you may use visuals. For a smaller audience, you can use visual, you can ask questions, but be sure to keep the materials, storyline, and lesson simple so that they could understand it very clear. Upon completion of your illustration, use your visuals to emphasize your message to your audience. This is very important. So you need to integrate theatrics. That means if you could provide visual aids, if you could provide pictures, if you can do some demonstrations, then you can. As long as you need to manage your time. Let's have number 9. Oh, there's a word keys. So observe the keys rule. So what do you mean by keys? Means keep it short and simple rule. So what is this? What do you mean by this? Keep it short and simple means that the worst crime of public speaking is trying to overdo your speech. Overdo means you are trying to fill in every information that you have in mind. So we need to remember if we are if we are writing a speech, you need to keep it short and simple. Researchers observed nowadays that the audience attention is shorter. So for your listeners to have other commitments to attend to, so don't let a very long lecture hold them hostage. So the more you prolong your speech, then the more likely they are going to lose interest. So that means keys rule trying to emphasize the summarization of your points and conclude your speaking engagement. And remember, they are the men of the hour, not you. So that is observe the keys rule. Next, we have the last one. Conclude your speech with a bang. So conclude. If earlier in a second tip, we encountered that we need to open our speech with a striking point. So if we open our speech with a striking point, then we need to end it with a big bang, a striking point as well. So there are various ways of impressing upon your audience your important message. So we are now on the conclusion part of your speech. So you can explore the use of interesting video, any videos in the internet. Relevant quotations could also be used to summarize your important message. Or you can do recap to your biggest point. So you can narrate a success story. So no hold bars. Your concluding statement is what your listeners will, in the final analysis, discuss when they leave the hall. So that's the concluding part of your speech. So we are done with the first phase in writing a speech. So in our next video, we will talk about the second and the third phase.